it has to do something with our attention. So, what is attention? Attention is basically a behavioral and cognitive process of selectively concentrating on discrete stimulus while ignoring other perceivable stimuli. So, when we are focusing our attention on certain things, we are basically directing all our focus on one thing, though that possibly could eliminate other things from our visual field. So the presentation goes in a way when we discuss attention, expectation bias, confirmation bias, inattentional bias, a couple of incidents, accidents, the prevention strategy, and finally, what is the solution, the conclusion. So attention, I said, is about focusing. So in the next slide, I will show you a target, a red color target, the usual target you see, with the bullseye in the center, but without any clutter. So try to look at the center of the target, the bullseye, and see how clearly and you can see it, discernible the colors. And always the question in your mind should be what is common between a phone conversation while driving and what could have been the world's worst air disaster. So as I go through this presentation, you should keep thinking about this question, which we will discuss at the end. Here's the target. If you see the black dot in the center, without putting much effort, you can visualize it, see it clearly, and concentric circles around them. Now, if I introduce some clutter around it, you will have to make some effort to keep your eye and attention towards the target. So you'll have to focus your cognitive power to keep concentrate, not to get distracted by the clutter. So here you are in Paris with the Eiffel Tower behind, cars and cafes and people around. You could see the red targets, but the black one in the center will be a difficult one to do. So you'll have to focus your attention, more attention as compared to the previous one. In this presentation, we are discussing some incidents, three of them, two in more detail. The first one is the Air Canada 759 at San Francisco, which was a very close call. Second one, Canadian North 9131, Fort McMurray, a similar one. And third is a maritime incident, an accident, which we will briefly discuss. This is a US nuclear reactor, which met with an accident with a Japanese shipping trawler. If you look at this 759 profile, you would see on the left that San Francisco airport has parallel runways which are crossing each other. The yellow line depicts the approach path which the aircraft was clear to land. The runway of the left of the yellow was closed. The arrival was at night, and the runway lights for the left runway were closed, shut, and there was a cross placed, illuminated cross. But for some reason, the pilot aligned to the right. If you see the red line, that is the taxiway, Charlie. And the pilot aligned to that. There were four aircrafts on that taxiway, Charlie. Aircraft flew over the four aircrafts. On the right, you would see what would be the profile of Air Canada 759. This shows 51 feet. Some places it's given 100 feet. But as told by the NTSB guys, it was about 10 feet. Coming back to the Paris presentation, while you were focusing on the target, did you miss out something? There were a number of children crossing the road. Did you notice them? If you did not, you were suffering from inattentional blindness. Things on the periphery dropped off while you were focusing on the target. So let's discuss more about it. The second incident, the Canadian North 9131. On the left, you see the flight profile. And on the right is the airport diagram. The aircraft carried out an instrument approach on localizer, if you see the red line. But for some reason, when they were in visual contact, they turned left, aligned to the taxiway, wherein a Dash 8 was taxiing. They did not see the Dash 8. They came as close as 54 feet before they were told to go around. And this is a classic example, the US nuclear reactor. And there was a Japanese fishery training and research trawler. The nuclear reactor had the commanding officer and other officers at the deck. There were certain guests, and they were demonstrating the capability of the nuclear submarine. During one of the maneuvers, they're supposed to go down in an emergency dive, and after that, release all ballast, come up quickly, surface. In this maneuver, the submarine itself surfaces over the water. That's an emergency procedure. So in order to demonstrate, they took the safety precautions. The commanding officer, who normally does not scan, did the scan. They put the periscope up. They did a 360-degree scan so that there is no fishing trawler or ship or anything which could be harmed anywhere around it. He confirmed nothing. The officer in charge did a scan on the periscope. He did not see anything. Then they performed the maneuver. When they came up, the stern of the submarine went through Ihaimaru.
What is common in all three was that there was something in front, very obvious, which nobody could see. It has something to do with our cognition and attention. Missing out the obvious. Now, these are two very famous books, Inattentional Blindness, written by Aaron Mack and Irwin Rock. These people came up with this, with the inattentional blindness while they were observing players playing football on the pitch. They noticed that while the players was focusing on something, they would miss out the obvious, maybe the ball or a pass, and they wondered why it was happening. So they did a research on change blindness and attentional blindness, and they came up with inattentional blindness. The book on the right, Invisible Gorilla, everybody is aware of it. The gorilla in the room, where the children are playing, the school-going kids are playing basketball. They're so engrossed in playing basketball that a gorilla man dressed in a gorilla walks by, and nobody notices them. So inattentional blindness happens when somebody's focusing too much attention. So everyone has limited cognitive processing capacity. They may have memory, but limited processing capacity. So when it is overloaded, then the brain shuts down certain parts of it. So intense focus can even make you blind, even to the stimuli that normally attract attention. Another would be when engaged in a demanding task. So unexpected stimulus can go unnoticed right in front of your eyes. So keyword is unexpected. The brain does dual processing of attention. So you could be in automatic mode. We are normally most of the time in automatic mode because we have our heuristics. Heuristics are self-made rules which are applied to different situations. For example, good is associated with white, black is bad, going up, company going in losses is red, coming back to profit is black. So we have made our own rules which we apply in most of the situations. We are not in the cognitive zone. So automatic is because cognition, we are cognitive misers. In automatic processing, cognition occurs with little effort. It is automatic specific stimulus and does not interfere with other mental processes. So basically, we do not have to put in much effort. But when it is a controlled, it is expensive, which means we really have to think. It is serial processing and triggered by presence of environmental stimuli. So if we are doing a mental maths problem, the more difficult it becomes, the slower we become in our physical ability and cognitive ability because we are focusing our attention or cognitive part to that mathematical sum. Other things which led to these things are expectation bias and confirmation bias. Expectation is basically the state of the brain that reflects prior information. So we already have some prior footprint or map in our brain, and we try to match it with what we see in the environment. It basically leads in day-to-day life to faster processing and acquisition and interpretation. Whereas confirmation, once we have acquired information, we will do everything to conform to it, even though the sensory inputs are giving data which are contradicting to what we have agreed to. But because of this bias, confirmation bias, we continue with our belief. There are about more than 100 biases. So it is important to know which one triggers when. A couple of them, 17 odd biases are very important, which everybody should go through. Coming back to San Francisco, this is the runway 28 right. Runway straight ahead, you see what the aircraft was clear to land. On the left is the runway which was closed. On the right is a taxiway, which the aircraft actually made the approach. So how could the aircraft make an approach on the taxiway with 4 aircrafts on it? Let's see. So pilot had a mental picture of the runway looking like this, what you see on the left, because he had flown to the airport so many times. His mental picture was when he sees the runway 28 right, there would be a runway on the left. That was his mental image. So at night, when he approached the runway, aligned to the taxiway, he saw one lighted surface on the left. So that basically aligned with his expectations. If you see the left, there is a landing surface on the left. And at night, he was on the green line with a landing surface on the left. So basically, one of the runways, the runway lights was closed, shut. So there were only 2 landing surfaces which were lighted up. So expectation bias came in and he confirmed, yes, when I see the runway, there should be a runway on my left. Now comes Fort McMurray. This is a Boeing 737 Canadian. The captain had been to the airport a number of times. And this picture on the left is the mental image he had. We have the runway and a taxiway on the right. So this is what the pilot had in mind. What did he actually see? Because he came after a long time, another taxiway was constructed. So on the left of the runway, there was a taxiway now, which was more prominent than the taxiway on the right. So we have the runway and the taxiway on the left. And there was a dash 8 on that. What did the pilot do? He tried to match his mental image that when I see the runway, so there should be a taxiway on the right. So landing surfaces. So if you see the third image on the right, he was on the localizer. When he came visual, he said, no, there's something wrong. Why is there a landing surface on the left? So he turned left to align the mental image so that the second surface remains to the right. San Francisco, left is the day simulation of the scenario where the 320 Air Carrier 759, you can see, and you have United Airlines 1, Philippine Airlines, and another United Airlines 863. So the pilot approached on the taxiway thinking it was runway 28 right, because 28 left was closed and the lights were switched off. So expectation bias, confirmation bias. But why did he see these big airliners with almost 1,000 people in it? So this could have been the world's worst air disaster after Tenerife and Turkey Dadri. The night simulation, as conducted in the simulator later, is on the right. This aircraft would have been here had it landed. It missed the Philippine Airlines by almost 10 feet, as we are told. If you see the profile picture, this is the real-time photograph which was taken by the CCTV cameras. United 1, Air Canada 759 approaching, and this is another profile picture. So maybe there was some lighting which he confused and he was aiming for, that he made an aim for this. If you see, why would anybody approach a taxiway? Okay, you get confused. But while conducting a visual approach, what are the cues that you get for a vertical profile? So the PAPI, as you can see, is on the main runway. There is no vertical guidance on the taxiway. So the pilot obviously is diverting all his attention, trying to figure out his vertical profile. So in this process, he basically cut out his field and inattentional blindness kicked in. Adding to that was fatigue. They had been up for almost 16 hours. And in the second Canadian, they were up for almost 16 hours. The duty was 11 hours, but they have been up for 16 hours. So these are things which affect inattentional blindness. There are other research done on them by Christopher Wickens of University of Illinois. He was conducting simulator experiments on aircrafts with head-up display. So head-up display is supposed to gather all the data and present it in front of the pilot so that he does not have to move his head. So if he is looking outside, the pertinent data is in front of him. It's supposed to enhance safety. But as per the experiment, he came to a different result. So while conducting the experiment, he came to the result that when experimenters put something unexpected but important in the pilot's field of vision, such as an airplane on the runway, pilots often miss objects. Why would that happen? So that is inattentional blindness because of unexpected, which is a keyword. Because pilots have such an incredibly high visual attention load, and that too on an approach when the pressure is highest, configuration changes, communication, checklist. So that is when it causes breakdown in attentional allocation, which becomes critically important. So as per the result of his research, he says that head-up display does not guarantee that events both on display and in the world beyond the aircraft will always be detected. So even though you are using higher technology, but the human and his cognitive powers are limited. If you overload or it gets overloaded for some reason, it basically shuts down other parts of the brain so that the task in hand gets priority. And in that process, certain unexpected and obvious objects can be missed out. So in conclusion, we can come to say that fixed gaze or attention can lead to visual impairment. Unexpected objects in the field of vision can be missed out. Brain has limited cognitive processing capacity. Brain can memorize, but processing is limited. Human bias adds to the onset of inattentional bias. It leads in and basically builds up the pressure. Fatigue, 16 hours of being awake, as per the research, reduces cognition to 75%. So what are the solutions? Solutions, number one to any problem is training and disciplined use of SOP. So scanning, if you keep scanning, you don't keep gazing at one particular object or place or point, so that you do not put all your cognitive power at one place. You have to keep on scanning. That is the first thing. Another is a Japanese concept called Shisakanko. Shisakanko is called pointing and calling. In Japan, they tested it on the bullet train drivers, the very high-speed trains. They point and call. So they are focusing their attention where they want to see. So what normally we do is we are looking without seeing. That is when accidents happen. But if you point and call, you are focusing your attention to that exact place where you want to see. And they have reduced accidents by almost 35%, error rates more than 80% because of this. And even CASA Australia is promoting pointing and calling. If in the cockpit we point to the knob or a switch we are changing, then we are basically switching off or correcting or changing the right parameter. The role of pilot monitoring as it is very important. In the last webinar, we discussed on unstable approaches, the psychology of unstable approaches. It is the pilot monitoring who plays a very important role. And in this particular incident, the San Francisco, his role was found wanting. The training standards were found wanting. But there were a number of issues which the investigators itself did not pay attention. We can discuss that during the Q&A session. And last but not the least, which is now in the forefront of every error, every incident, fatigue risk management. So how do you manage your fatigue? The system, the human himself. So that is a big issue now. Coming back to the question, what is common between a phone conversation while driving and overflight of taxiway by Air Canada 759? If somebody has come up with a solution, you can put it on the chat board. Otherwise, during the question and answer session, I'll give you the solution or the answer to it, which is very interesting and which you will find